All right, it's John Wood here, the founder of Rage Out. I'm here with Mitch Webb, another male somatic practitioner, somatic therapist, I guess. And rather than doing the long-winded intros, I thought we would just start off on a topic that I think is pretty interesting, which is that men should be, well, let's leave the shoulds, get rid of the shoulds, but men would benefit from this work just as much as women. So what do you think about that, Mitch?
Hey, no, man, men should not be in this work. We need to cut off all ties to men and we just heal the women and hopefully they'll just our asses along, right? Nah, man, amen to that. Yeah, it's funny finding this work as a man. I think we're less likely to be the sex that goes first. And that became obvious for me. We were kind of chatting beforehand. When I was in a men's group, I was reading... I started the group with my other buddies started. They brought me into it. I was really in my health coaching at the time. It's probably 2.5, 3 years ago. I'm reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score. I remember specifically getting to the early developmental trauma stuff and flipping right past that. Like going, that's not me. And
that's not you. Yeah.
I had no idea. And I'm sharing some things in this group, and I made a comment that was just emotionally immature. I thought I was being like a bro and or being cool, maybe tough. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and one of the guys pulls me aside at the end. He's like, "Hey, you're reading that book, The Body Keeps the Score, talking about trauma." And I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's you. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And he's like, dude, especially with your story and chronic illness, it just makes so much sense. He's like, you're the guy in the story. And he's like, I know because I've been there. And he's like, I've got a therapist for you to check out. And that's started my journey of unpacking, trauma and seeing the connection between trauma and chronic illness, and started my journey of unpacking all that shit.
I think it's such a great place to start because most people, especially most guys, I think, but most people, like I got people in my family where I'm like, you are so traumatized, but they don't think there's any trauma at all. And so there's this almost this education gap right now where like most people in most places, it seems, certainly in the Western world, are traumatized to some degree, but no one really knows. And if trauma is like a big car accident or rape or war or some big thing, if you don't have that, there's no trauma. So how do you, what's trauma to you? How do you explain trauma?
How do I explain trauma? I mean, gosh, I could take a couple different routes to that, but I think it's a what's the word I'm trying to say? It's this word. I just had it in my mind. It's an adaptation to a stressor, a moment that was overwhelming that we couldn't respond to. And so we ended up shutting down, and that, as we would say, implicit memory. The memory, the traumatic memory, the stressor gets stuck in the body, and it's taking up space. And eventually, for someone like me, it's going to start pressing on different systems like your immune system, autoimmunity, your digestive system. I couldn't digest food. Your energy system. You're going to be either come to this work not feeling anything, and that's the person that's going to say, I don't have any trauma. Because they're in a freeze or a functional freeze. And then there's my hair's on fire. And I think I got lucky enough to feel that hair, to feel myself on fire, to want to, you kind of got to hit like a turning point and I exhausted everything, and it's like, I'm either going to go with this or keep avoiding it.
Right. So it's the men's group. What's that?
How would you define trauma?
I mean, I'd probably paraphrase one, Peter Levine or one of those guys where it's like, man, some bad shit happened. There was a stress response. You wanted to run away. You wanted to attack. You wanted to do something that produced emotion. Well, that was basically emotion, but it wasn't resolved at the time. So it gets stuck and it fucks everything up. The metaphor I use in, I have a course where I teach people how to do this is like blocked pipes. So kind of like the energy wants to move through the pipe, but when there's trauma, it's like all of that shit gets stuck and the pipe gets blocked. Or you could think about like a toilet gets blocked, and it's a mess, man. And like you want to fix the toilet, you have to unblock the toilet. It's not about saying affirmations or thinking about how grateful you are to have a toilet. You need to get like a plunger and get in there and like get all that shit out from the past in the toilet or in the pipe. So to me, the trauma is that. It's that stuck energy from the past, the leftover, the residue. That is unprocessed, which keeps the system in an elevated, activated state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what we call dysregulation.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck. I'm using my window here as like my window of tolerance, and I'm stuck. I'm sympathetic. I'm out of the window. I'm up here, or I'm shut down, and I'm really cycling between those. I think is an easy way to talk about dysregulation.
So you mean like where like with so for people who are just listening to it, you've got a pen and you're drawing like a wave, like a sound wave. We're talking about like at the bottom is maybe like a somewhere in the middle maybe is like relaxation, baseline, and then if you go up, you go fight, flight. That's you starting to get stressed, starting to get want to attack or destroy, run away. At the top, you hit freeze, right? If it's too much, but then you're flipping all the way down to the very bottom of that sound wave. It's not really a sound wave, but that wave. That's what you mean, right? And then when you dysregulate, you're actually flipping between this high activation of like go, like destroy, attack, run away, and total shutdown.
Yeah, it's like I think it presents for me. It was when I started this work. It was I feel so much, and I have no idea what's going on, right? And then there's also so that's the high activation. That's at the top end of the wave there, and at the bottom there's this functional freeze where we've learned that we have to shut down, make ourselves small, push away or avoid certain parts of ourselves. And then we learned that like if I shut down and I stay small, I can stay in this false window of tolerance that is functional freeze, and I can be seen. I can get love because I'm not too much. I'm not enough. So it's like this new carved out false window of tolerance that is functional freeze, where we just don't have access to ourselves. We're kind of in our bubble. We're in our bubble. We're living our own bubble, and we're living underwater. Almost is what it feels like. We don't have access to emotions and life.
Mm-hmm. So we're throwing out some lingo here, which to you and me makes sense because we've been doing this for a while. But what is, for example, functional freeze? What's that?
What is that? Well, it's high tone dorsal. If we want to get super using the dictionary there, but what is freeze? Freeze is shut down. Freeze is a couple of symptoms that come to mind would be like fatigue, some autoimmune, some sluggishness. You add to that.
I mean, to me, freeze is like the video that Irene shows, right? Where the gazelle gets chased by the cheetah. Gazelle catches the cheetah, wraps its jaws around the gazelle does not catch the cheetah. The cheetah catches the gazelle. The cheetah wraps its jaws around the gazelle's neck. The gazelle freezes. And so I guess like in an extreme level where it's meant to be is that's like numb, paralyzed, can't move. Blood goes to the core, the organs, all that sort of stuff to stem the bleeding. So it's like a pause, like you're about to die. Maybe you get to run away after that. And a functional freeze is that, but you're not so frozen, numb, or paralyzed that you can't move. You're like, there's enough of that online. So your ability to feel is, muted quite a bit, but you can still walk around. You can still go to work. You just don't really feel like you're like half alive, maybe is one way to think about it. It's like a functional version of that non-functional state.
Yeah, and it's like the functional freeze is, for me, it was so much harder to recognize. Like it took a lot more work. Like that the activation was the high sympathetic tone. That's easy to feel and to see and to know when that's happening. The functional freeze, I don't know about you, but it was like super slippery, like difficult to see. Was it like that for you at all?
I mean, I haven't honestly used that phrase, functional freeze. I mean, to be honest, I think that's totally where I was at. For me, it was like looking back, it was probably more, I described life before the somatic stuff it's gray, like it's black and white. Now I feel like I'm living more in color. That's one way of putting it. How did it manifest for you when you say it was slippery? Like what was life like when you were in functional freeze?
Well, I mean, we went and did our first SPT, like our first intensive with Irene Lyon, 8 months ago. And at that time, I thought I only had a bunch of activation. I thought, there's no freeze in here. And these, I was blaming it on different things. It was always me trying to figure out what's wrong with me and fix it. And, black or white or gray is a really good way of describing it. Another one is like I gave this analogy of like, it's like being held underwater for your entire life and then finally coming up for air. And I feel like that being held underwater, it's just, if you think about you're underwater, you're moving slow, you just don't have a lot of access to that life force, to the beauty of life. One thing that really shifted for me was my eyesight. Started going like, God damn, like the world is beautiful. And you hear a lot of people, especially with like politics and just different political and global events that are going on. It's like, man, it's a terrible time to live, and the world sucks. And I'm like, yeah, but have you ever come out of survival mode, dude? Like, good God, like everything's pretty dope. Unless I insert myself into the chaos, life is beautiful.
Right. So when you're more in that functional freeze mode, it's almost like life felt flat. Like flat, dull, gray, black and white, underwater, like muted. Like the underwater, I think is like, I'm a musician, so I can hear like, if you're underwater, all the high frequency sounds are muted out. It's kind of like, can't really. So it's like you're not really getting the full spectrum. Is that kind of what you mean? That you're not really getting the full spectrum of life?
Oh no, with your car, my car radio, I can be on a regular station and it sounds good. But then if it goes into HD radio, it is like, I mean, it's incredible sound. And it's like, you don't notice it until you hear it, until you've heard it, you know?
Right. I mean, this has been one of the, when I've been trying to explain this nervous system approach to people, it's like, man, I mean, this is almost a tangent, but it's like, man, most like self-help systems seem to be like, they're still working on the same issue. They're still all working on functional freeze, but they don't call it that. They don't have the language for it. So it's like, we're working at like standard definition. And then you get this nervous system model and it's like super, ultra, high definition max or something. So there's that, but then also just in like your experience, like going from that okay radio or standard definition radio to high definition radio, HD radio or HD audio or something like that. Like it's a bit like that where the challenge with it is you don't know, that's why it's slippery. You don't know like that you're in that functional freeze, that you're underwater. You don't know because you've been in that for your whole life in most cases for most people. So that it's only when you come out of it, you're like, oh, is this how it feels to be healthy? Like, is this just not, this is pretty fantastic, but is this just normal? Is this just what healthy people feel all the time?
Yeah, 100%, man. It's like we have these, we start to identify with our protective patterns that have kept us, that have allowed us to survive. So maybe that's people pleasing, perfectionism, black or white thinking, intellectualizer, right? I am anxious. So our identity becomes these protected patterns that are the freeze, that are the trauma, and we're until you can really take a step back and build the capacity to. It's all awareness, so just build the capacity to be able to see these things. And it's like once you can see it, you don't have to be it. But going back to what you said earlier too about all these other programs, that feels like a distraction. It feels like busy work. So I'm just going to go and because there is no connection to self, and that's the glue, the following my own impulse and listening to my body instead of relying on the external to get a result. So if I'm going to use breath work, let's say, which hey, I did, I'm going to get into a holotropic breathwork class for 45 to 60 minutes, completely starve myself of oxygen to get a feeling that then calms me. But like, what happens the next day after that? Is that what your system needed? Does your system need to hyperventilate? Or is that just distracting you from this feeling that's uncomfortable that we don't have the capacity to sit with at the time?
All right, so you're saying breathwork more as a, like, because breathwork is a rage right now. This is an interesting topic. Breathwork, meditation, all of it. Breathwork, I see these ads come up on Instagram, man. This ninth dimensional breathwork, whatever the fuck it is. And I'm like really skeptical of this stuff. I've done enough of it now where I'm like, man, nothing comes close to this shit we're talking about here, this nervous system work. But it sounds like you're talking about breathwork being a lot of people seem to see it as a way to go into stuff, into feelings. They can have a big emotional release. But you're talking about more as like a bypass.
Yeah, it's like
a way to avoid something.
It's like mental gymnastics, and there is no things are black and white totally. I think it's a good tool for the right person that's getting started, that can't sit still, that's got a lot of sympathetic energy. That's where I think of things like a movement practice, like Qigong. Maybe not quite Feldenkrais yet. Maybe a little bit of yoga or just nature walking with a little bit more presence. And because I know for me, it was so easy with breath work, with yoga to push past my capacity because I was so used to abandoning my body and going past, my capacity, thinking if I just beat myself up, like that's what my body needs, that's the conditioning instead of, well, what does my body need? And it's like it's a whisper. You can react from the trauma, the anxiety, and feel like you got to do it right now, or I gotta go do the most. And that voice can be really loud. It's slowing down to listen to the whisper of like, this is too much. You know? So it's not to knock breath work. It's more about just context.
This is the tricky thing about it. This is the tricky thing I have trying to explain this to people is there's so much like nuance here. It's not just, oh, you're feeling stressed. Do you want to open up emotionally? Go and do a breathwork class. It's like, well, maybe spend a year or 2 years learning about your nervous system. No one wants to hear that. They just want to go do their breathwork class, pay their $50, whatever it is, drink some cacao and have a release. And what you're talking about is this, and this is what I've been, I've done that stuff too. Like I've done plant medicine ceremonies. I still do. But there's a certain, like, it seems like I notice people are different. Some people, like their challenge is just getting enough motivation to do any of this work. And for some people, you might be the same as me by the sound of it. It's like chasing intensity. Like, give me the intense experience. Give me the ayahuasca, the magic mushrooms, the crazy breath work experience that has me sobbing by the end of it. And it's really been a practice. I don't know if men are more like that in general or what, but there's certainly been a practice of learning the subtleties of being like, now it's been more like, oh, now the practice is how relaxed and safe can I feel? How much of that can I cultivate? And then it's just these tiny little, yesterday we were on a call with our teacher, Irene, and there was a twitch in my back. It's like that, like sometimes it's that simple. It's like just this little muscle twitch, and that can be all that's needed in that moment. And it's less about, let's dig something up, let's go blast the system open, and more about cultivating like a platform of safety. And then things just come up when they're ready to come up. We don't go looking for it. That's that whisper.
Yeah, dude. That's God. I've gotten that lesson. This safety, instead of chasing the big, because I saw my actual window of tolerance, after our first event, like I saw how small my window of tolerance was, that I was blowing past. And I was tired for months. We used to talk about this a lot, and I thought I wanted this. I wanted to get it out. I wanted to fix it, and completely ignoring my own capacity. And what I learned over time is what you just mentioned is I wanted trust. I wanted safety, and the only way we can do that is through self-trust.
What's a window of tolerance?
I'd say that's where we feel good. That's we're not too activated, we're not shut down, we're present, we're creative. Stress feels easy, effort feels good. It's the sun's shining. I'm noticing nature. I'm present, but I'm also, it also feels kind of like that's that coming up for water after being held underwater and seeing the beauty of life. And it feels like I have full access to myself. I'm not 80% Mitch. I'm not 75% Mitch. It's full me, but I don't think you even know what that means until you experience it. And I think what I'm kind of describing too, as I'm saying, window of tolerance, is also that coming out of survival energy.
It sounds like too, even the language, the phrasing of that, you're talking about doing like a big release, like whether it's a breathwork thing or something else, where you're going way outside your window of tolerance. So what do you mean by that? That you can be inside and outside? Or what do you mean? What does it mean to be outside your window of tolerance? What are some signs of that?
For me, the first one I'm going to notice is probably overthinking something. So what that's telling me is I'm avoiding some type of feeling that's uncomfortable or I don't have the capacity to be with at the moment. And so I'm going into my head to think my way to safety instead of trusting myself, trusting my body. And that can come from just full send, like I call it hold my beer. And that's the going into the intensity of the experience just for the intensity, just to get this outcome that our brain is creating or saying that we need, but that may not be what we need right now. So again, we've abandoned our body. And so that's our symptoms. That's when we're in a contraction. I don't feel like myself. I feel like I'm underwater. My symptoms are popping up. And the one that I've been noticing more is just like, oh, here comes my thoughts, like trying to figure out what's wrong and intellectualize my safety instead of actually feeling safe.
Right. So it's kind of like how, to use a metaphor, which might make it easier for people to understand, is like your window of tolerance is like, man, maybe I can do 5 reps of a back squat at 100 kilos, 220 pounds. And, next workout, I can do 105, 102.5 kilos, or maybe 100, 225 pounds. If I was to go and put 300 kilos on that bar, I'd be well outside my window of tolerance. Like I would not be able to lift that much. I'd get hurt. My nervous system would not have the capacity to output that amount of force. It's a little bit like that. It's how I've been explaining like capacity to, nervous system capacity to people, is that if we're going to use that window of tolerance thing, it's like, man, if there's an experience, you're not doing deadlifts or back squats with weight, but you're doing a kind of emotional deadlift. If you're going to be feeling some fear, some terror, some rage, some shame from 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it's an energetic deadlift, like an emotional deadlift. And if you haven't been doing much emotional stuff for decades, like a lot of people, you may be well outside. You may have no business at all lifting that weight right now. You'd be much better off, do a few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then go and watch some Netflix. And this is a pain in the ass. Like I hated, still get frustrated with this aspect. Like I want to do it all right fucking now, but, and this is where the breath work, this is the challenge with breath work or ayahuasca and things like that. Like these things are great. I love psychedelics. I live in Peru. I do ceremonies regularly. But there's a certain level of like, okay, if something comes up, I know exactly how to work with it, how to stay with it, how to stay within that window of tolerance. Whereas you take someone who doesn't know this, they don't have the theory, they don't have the techniques, they get hit with something that could just blow them completely out of the water. They're no longer in their body. They don't know how to stay with their sensations. Maybe they think, like I think overthinking is probably that's how I disconnect, is be in my head. Some people, they just float off. They're like not even here. They're like space cadets. They may not be thinking, but they're just floaty. I see that a lot. So that's usually how I explain it. That window of tolerance is like, it's like lifting weights, man. Emotional deadlifts.
Yeah, I love that. And that actually leads into, one of the concepts that Irene shared with us that really helped me when it comes to knowing where my capacity is and like when to keep going, when to pause, when to rest, is like that traffic light, right? So there's a green light, everything's good, we're moving through stuff. There's the yellow light where it's like, ooh, maybe I need to pause here. And then there's the stop. And I remember the first time my therapist, we were in therapy, and dude, I was terrified because I was just, it's like watching you lift this heavy weight, and I'm like, oh damn, John lifts 300 kilo. Like I want to do that. And so I go into that with the same intensity I've done my whole life of, I'm gonna do this perfect. I'm gonna do this right now. I'm gonna do the most, and then I'm just wide open. But what I learned is that I said, I think I've done enough. And she was like, oh, awesome, hell yeah! Like we were just starting the session too, and she's like, how do you know? And it's exactly what you said. It's like it feels like I can't do another rep, and that was such a huge turning point because now I'm feeling it. I'm listening to my capacity and I'm honoring that. And it's kind of like I think about in the gym, like Pavel Tsatsouline. He's a Russian kettlebell guy. He talks about greasing the groove. And that's kind of how we have to approach this work. We have to unlearn this hold my beer approach where we go 120. And if we can do 10 reps, we do 7, right? And that means that's gonna let me recover, integrate, and be ready to do it again. And that doesn't mean every day. It means like the next week or the next other week or whatever that is. But that was a big concept for me that actually built that safety and that self-trust, because now I can listen instead of just blowing past the yellow and flying past the red light and end up in jail every time.
For me, this is one thing that I think it deserves like better explanations when I've like learned from different teachers, different people in this space. But for me, it's like how I notice, I guess it's different for everyone, but my ways of like how I can see, okay, I need to take a break is like if I'm feeling something, like I'm, feeling the ground, staying with my sensations in my body, and something's, coming up. Often, if I start to feel myself getting distracted, like I start checking my phone, start going on the computer, I start fiddling, I can't sit still anymore. I'm like, okay, time to take a break. That's one thing. Or another thing is yawns. I start yawning heaps. And I'm like, oh, okay, I think my system's trying to like put the brakes on.
Oh, and that can
Yeah.
also be that, and that's a sticky one too. That's a slippery one to use.
That's a tricky one because sometimes the yawn can be a release. I know.
Do you remember when we were at SPT last, and like, I don't know if you saw me doing this, but every afternoon we'd get into like the walking through stuff, a lot of parasympathetic. Well, not necessarily just parasympathetic, but it was like a lot of social engagement. We can bring on the parasympathetic. And bro, I was just yawning like uncontrollably. And so, yeah, that can mean, hey, that break is coming on. We're going to that high tone dorsal, that freeze. Or it can mean like we're coming out of like sympathetic energy as well, activation.
Yeah, I don't know. That was a recent one where, because I've been working with this pattern, this stuff in my back, and last like year, some of the stuff that's been going on for me. And I think I said to Seth or Irene, like, man, I just yawn heaps. And I'd be like yawn, like I'd go for a walk and just yawn for like half an hour straight, like yawn. And I think one or both of them were like, man, try not yawning. Like it could be that's your management strategy. That like the sympathetics your system's trying to go into sympathetic, trying to go into like a survival response, a fight or flight response. And because the system's, it's just learned a defensive management strategy of slowing it down. Don't go there. So the yawn is a way to like put the brakes on prematurely. So I was like, all right, let's try that. Let's see what happens if I don't yawn.
What happened?
I mean, dude, it's been a pretty fucking wild 12 months.
So
8 months.
But do you remember a moment when you got that? I think it's a really good tip, because when Seth and I were working together at SPT, I had one of my first like freezes in an actual session. Like I've experienced that in psychedelic work, which I'd be interested to hear what you'd say about that. But I used to always process freeze on psychedelics. But that's the thing, is I had this tightness like coming up my throat. And I could feel it, and it's almost like I grabbed it. I didn't want it. How can I say that? Like I prevented it from coming out. And what he had me do is relax it, and then these waves of activation, deactivation are going on. I wanted to take a deep breath, and he told me the same thing. And it's kind of ties into the conversation that we're having, because we learn these things through experience. I find that when I learn something new, it's like, oh, I have more capacity. I have more options. It's like until that moment, I have one way of dealing with different sensations, emotions, symptoms as they're coming up. And you learn that it's you got to have a million tools, and it's just awareness. And the more we learn, and it goes back to the nuance thing. It is so nuanced, but if you learn through those reps, putting the reps in, seeing, oh, you know what? I didn't fucking die. That's good information. Okay, so next time I don't have to be as afraid of this. I can bring on more trust. And the more we see that, we trust our body. My body knows exactly what it's doing. I don't have to show up and dump everything out of my brain to get it right, to get the outcome I'm looking for. I just show up and go, hey, my body, let's go. Let's just go. But that takes a long time for me to do.
Dude, yes. This is like the funny thing. This is not a quick fix, overnight, magic bullet, anything. This is like deep shit. One thing I wanted to say though is I mean that when I like asked Seth and Irene, I was like, man, you guys like tell people to yawn, like that might happen. It's like, yeah, it's a bit of an advanced thing. Like this is in some ways like what a lot of these tools are, is like how do you get yourself out of the way so everything can just come up? And there's like the obvious things we do to manage our emotions, and then there's the not so obvious ones. And like part of the practice seems to be about seeing those things and then knowing when I'm going to open things up right now. I have some space, some time. I'm going to open things up. I'm going to get out of the way and we're going to see what comes up. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, I need to take a break because I need to fucking do some shit, get some work done, sleep, whatever it is.
It's almost like I need to sit with this for a minute, because how often have we had those things come up? It's like that little younger us knocking at the door in the freezing rain. And it's like, please, like, let me in, like, give me some attention. We're just, wham, slam the door. Like, no. Let me biohack this.
But then it's like because I get that, but then I think for me it was like I'm just going to go into it all the time. I'm going to go hang out with that dude all the fucking time, and it's been a real practice to be like, look, I'll hang out with you for half an hour, whatever it is, and then like fuck off. I'm going to go back and watch Netflix or whatever it is. I'm going to go forget about you, huh?
It would be pendulation, right? Like
absolutely
doing intensity and then saying I'm going to go chill. That's good. Talk more about that, man, because I am realizing that's something I've done because for so long we didn't pay attention to our body, right? And we had all this shit going on. And once we start paying attention, it's like, oh shit, this guy's listening now. Here's the whole truckload. So if we got so number one, your body's feeling safe. If that's happening, like, let's celebrate that. But like, talk about that, like, all the time thing.
I mean, for me, I remember when I first got into this work, I was flying back from Thailand to Australia, and I had this weird feeling in my stomach, really unsettled stomach gut somewhere. And I just thought, I'll just sit here on this 8-hour plane ride and feel it the entire time. I won't watch any movies. Yeah, I just thought that was what you're meant to do. And then it's been a process of learning, things get a bit like constipated when I do that. Like if I feel it for a bit, and then once I feel like I've had enough, I go do something else, which for me can be anything: guitar, TV, music, gym, jujitsu, like just basically taking the attention into it and then taking the attention out of it. And that can be on like a micro level, like, oh, I'm feeling this pain in my viscera, my gut. Let me go feel my big toe for a bit. And then let's go back to the viscera. Like I can do it just within the body, or I can also do it from like my body to my environment. So like pain in my chest. Oh, look, something neutral, like the light bulb over there. Or it becomes a more macro level, like, oh, I'm feeling just gross and guilty or anxious or something right now. Okay, let's feel that for a bit. All right, did that. Been 20 minutes. All right, now let's go watch The Last Kingdom on Netflix. And that makes everything works better when I do that.
Do you ever have the experience of like, it's hard to shut that off? Do you have any suggestions or tips for that?
Yeah, dude. I mean,
I imagine myself being like, how do I get this volume to come down?
Absolutely. I mean, right now, like what I've been working through is like, I've had this OCD, fairly mild, but enough that it like just grates on me. And often it feels like there's no escape from it. Like I'll be working, I can be feeling something, but I'll be like, oh, let me go chill out and read a book on the couch. 10 minutes in, it's like, hey man, you probably left the stove on. You should check the stove, And I'm like, bro, let me fucking relax. This is probably what I need more than anything else, is just to chill the fuck out. Leave me, so I get pissed off with it and stuff like that. Or I wake up in the middle of the night and, I hear certain voices in my head. This is a pretty drawn out, long process. So yeah, there is for me, I guess it's I've had to find things that are so engaging that I do forget about that voice or those thoughts or the trauma, whatever you want to call it, right? So not every show is going to do that. Not every book is going to do that. But if it's interesting enough, if it's like a thriller that has me on the edge of my seat, I will forget about whatever I was worried about. If I'm with certain people, when you're with people, you laugh and you're having a good time, like same thing. Like you go into like a flow state, I do forget about what's bothering me. So but not everything is like that. If I'm not super into whatever I'm doing, I won't get that effect.
Mm-hmm. One thing I would add to that is like, but it almost sounds like I'm still in it when I describe it as I'm thinking about this, is like, we go into that observer mode and say like, it's just more observing it, like not letting myself add additional fear to it. Like, okay, yeah, this is present. Hey, I see you. I'm with you. You're not doing this alone. But I'm noticing that I'm having a thought about whatever. And I'm noticing this activation, noticing this fatigue. Right now, for me, it's been, I understand how to work with I'm more familiar working with the activation. Lately, it's been the fatigue, and it's like, fuck, like, what do I do? Because I'm apathetic. I don't feel like I want to do anything. I feel like I have no energy to do anything. And so it's like, so what do I do? But I love what you're talking about, like find something really interesting to immerse yourself into. For me, that would probably be nature, exercise, love music, and I'm really, really loving like qigong. Me and Ilya are gonna do a little podcast on Wednesday and record like a little movement thing, and I think that works so good. Like last night, I was even preparing for the podcast. Last night I had all this like imposter syndrome stuff come up, and just like, who do you think you like? All that I'm just doing this movement, and I'm like, holy shit! I'm just kind of watching it. Like in the past, I would go into that, and that would become the experience. But sometimes just watching it a little bit, and naming it, and naming it as a thought instead of like, this is not me, this is just a part, and we're going to give it a little attention, and then we're going to give it a little space, create a little
Absolutely, man. Yeah, space.
Yeah.
Space. One thing I really love to do is, I notice this when I do like a San Pedro ceremony, like this, I don't know what it is, man. It's like a fucking lizard underneath my skin. Feels like it's alive. Feels like it has consciousness of its own. It is bizarre. It's a very weird sensation. And for a while, I spent a lot of time feeling the sensation directly. I was like, if I could just feel this enough, then it will dissolve, go away. Never worked. Just seemed to agitate it, if anything. And so one thing that became a really powerful thing was just going to the edge of it, being like, I think a friend of mine, he said, I was like, this is like jujitsu for my fucking mind or my emotions. Like, go to the very edge of the sensation and just like I'm just peering in, like, don't, and then go to a different edge and like just always stay in the gaps. And then it's like it's trying to get my attention, like it wants me to focus on it, but I'm just sort of, finding all the space, to use that word, space. Find the space where it's neutral or okay. It was a game changer, man.
Now, I'm wondering what was at the edge, because when I've done this around anger, and I'll imagine how big it is and get to that edge, and then boom, there's a bunch of grief. Is there anything at the edge, or what happens at the edge?
Nothing really happened at the edge of this thing. There's no real emotion. I spent a lot of time at that edge. What seems to have happened, or what seems to be unfolding right now, is like I've gotten better at, there's a certain bracing or control structure within my system. And I've gotten like my own, it's like unconscious management strategies for holding stuff in. And then as that's been relaxing, then the emotional stuff comes up. And I think that deeper stuff that's probably more stored down in the gut and the chest, maybe the torso, is what's behind this thing in my face. That's been the latest sort of iteration where I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. It's like this facial tension changes. I feel my gut change, and my gut changes. This stuff in the face changes. So I wonder if this is just a symptom of what's going on down here.
Yeah, it feels like it's all connected, right? There's like a string that connects these things. Like you and I were doing an exercise yesterday that was being on the spot in front of everyone. And man, I freaking had this band of stuff show up, and that used to be scary. And it's like the body gives us more, but it's now when this stuff happens, I'm like cheering on. I'm like, hell yeah, dude. Like we got a new layer, and it's cool how this thing can connect to this thing and this. And then there's all of a sudden, there's this moment where maybe you're in a co-regulation in a one-on-one session. And it's like, you just, what is complex trauma? It's just this mess, right? And if you just pull that one cord out, other cords come with it, right? How much, and in that process, we're kind of titrating it. We're getting to know it until it's ready. And again, I think that goes back to like trusting the body and letting it do its thing. It can be excruciatingly slow, but the body seems to always know. And if we can get out of the way, we're more successful with this stuff. We just want to control it.
Yeah. That's what I mean. This is where I've gotten to with my own shit right now, is like, these tools are great. Like, I want to feel this emotion. What color is it in shape and all this somatic stuff. But then where I've gotten to with some of my own things I'm working on right now is like any attempt to do anything with it just makes it hold on, keeps it there. It's like any attempt to like affect it in any way seems to reinforce the same pattern that something's wrong, something's not okay. And so it's been a practice of.
So how do you work with that then? That's good. So I'm like on the edge of my seat. I'm like, how do you work with that?
Dude, I mean,
like here's me. Tell me if this makes sense. The last like 5 or 6 sessions that I've had, the last 2 months, let's say, no, it's got to be more than that. Yeah, I guess 2 months. I've started moving stuff out. Couple mostly sympathetic, some freeze. And now that I see that I can move it out, I'm like, let's move it out every time. And if I don't move it out every time, it's kind of like, it feels like I'm kind of grasping at something. And we know that like a balloon, if it's filled up with air and we're just grasping at it, what's it do? It just floats away. So what do you do then?
I mean, dude, part of it has been learning to let go of the idea that I'm in control, which is
whoa. Next.
Which is, dude, I mean, it's hard. Like, I mean, like a guy I've been working with here, we've been talking about like in the relation to like God, like you get to the point, you try everything to deal with a problem. And I feel like I haven't tried everything, but I've like tried a lot of shit. And I'm like, it's still there. It's whatever this thing is still there. And so part of it is just like giving it to God or source or whatever your relationship is with that, which is a practice. I'm not perfect at that by any means. I'm not perfectly available. And even part of that's been part of the lessons going, I'm not perfectly available or perfectly present or perfectly surrendered. This is me right now. And just being okay with that. The other part from a technique perspective, since doing the touch work with Seth, has really just been learning to relax deeper and deeper layers of the bracing like in the pelvic floor and the gut and the kidneys and the shoulder blades and the neck and the head, the eyes, the jaw. And that's not really like, it's tricky because it's like all I'm doing is softening and relaxing. And then whatever happens from there is just what happens from there. Because if I try and do something, tension comes into the system. So it's like, okay, so from a conceptual perspective, it's like, just accept that you don't have control. And then from a technique perspective, it's like just soften and relax. But then it still just happens when it happens. Like I can't force it. It just gets in the way, which is fucking frustrating, man. Most of the time.
Well, think about what we're talking about. Like going back to this hold my beer, I've used force my whole life, right? That was my only gear, dude. And what you're talking about is this passive healing process, which is so counterintuitive to the I don't care. Tell me what to do. Like, dude, I can't tell you how many times I've told that to different mentors and people I've worked with. Like, tell me what to do. I'll do it. Like, there's nothing I won't do. And you try everything. That's what I did with this past year with like hormone replacement, being on testosterone replacement. That just gave me an excuse to blame the shutdown and the activation on that. And the more I hired a really good doctor and we did it piece by piece, and I'm finally got everything balanced, and I'm still shutting down and have activation. So it's like I had to empty all that out, empty out every single way of what could be wrong and what could I be doing here. And it's like, oh, this is the dysregulation. This is the nervous system. And I have to go with this passive thing. I have to accept this is where I'm at right now. Like you just said, I have to allow the sensation. I have to soften into it. And like, it's this lady, I think this is what we call brain retraining. I'm starting to understand. I got this book from this lady in like the 50s. I'm not seeing it, but that's her thing is accept it, allow it, and pass through it with as much ease as you can. I think you can even add that approach to orienting and following your impulse that Irene teaches. And now you just got this, it's surrender, dude. It's surrender, it's trust, and it's allowing. And that's really hard if we've never had safety, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah. It's almost like the path at some point becomes just that, just being. And then to be fair, like, right, if something does come up, if there's some like aggression or rage, like I don't know exactly what to do with it. Like I've got all the like the techniques and the theory. Like I know if the big thing does come up, I know how to address it. But if there's nothing there like obvious to work with, it's really just like that's what the past seems to be like now. It's just being, feeling. Like I love standing in the wind, feeling the wind on my face. That's probably become just a good nervous system resort. Like it's just the way the wind feels, that it's fucking magic, man. So that's a lot of what I do now. Yeah.
Feeling your hands as you're going through, like God, or since SPT, just lay on the fucking ground. Do you know?
Right.
Do you know, dude? They're like, I think being in Whistler at this event and not having a TV at nighttime was the first time I've done that in like forever. And the first time we were there, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm going crazy. I need to watch like the show or something. And the second time I was just like, I now that I came back, I'm like, I think I'm ready to throw the TV out, unless there's like a good sports on, man, it's so nice to just lay it on the ground or just like not do shit.
One thing I wanted to cover before we finish this type of thing is, I imagine for like you would have noticed this too, right? Like we do a training with Irene Lyon, a teacher of ours, and whether it's like the teacher training thing we're doing now or SBSM, which I guess you've done, the 21-day thing, it's like 80, 90, 95% women. And so you have a handful of dudes in there. That's why I was surprised to see you in there. And then we've got another guy in this SPT training right now. What's the point of this? Like when I try and explain this to a lot of guys, women usually get it, but I think a lot of men are like, sounds pretty gay, man. Like it's like that's the attitude. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea. This is the most legit thing you will ever do. It's the most rewarding, best thing you will ever do.
The most gay thing you can do.
Huh? I swear I've heard that. That's so, you see it on Instagram, man. There's like some guy having an emotional release and the comments are like, Gay.
Yeah, dude, that was me, man. So what, that I felt like I came from a different world, than a lot of the people in the group, and maybe that's just like my experience with this emotional stuff, and not having safety, not in my family, God, admitting you need help or have a problem, or not even that, like you're dealing with some shit. We all do. That means you're weak, So the point, what level do you want it at? I think at a very big, deep ass level, we're healing the planet. We're healing consciousness. We're healing, like good and evil. We're evolving. We're experiencing more life. From someone who's dealt with chronic disease and for the last 20 years been sick. I now know the reason why. And it's not just, I thought it was the Lyme disease, the heavy metals, the traumatic brain injuries, the long haul COVID, is all that. No, it's everything. And you can look at your family system and say it's early developmental trauma or it's generational trauma. Bro, everything that we do is traumatic to our system. And as a human collective, we've been locked in trauma and unable to see ourselves for so long. And I'm really learning that by looking at Seth's book that he shared about the multiverse, and it's just cracking my dome open, and I'm scraping my brains off the ceiling. But that's the big thing, And then at a smaller thing, I think something that's helpful for men is it affects everyone around you. We want to be the protectors, and we want to be there for our family and our loved ones, and we can't be there if we're checked out. That we're not allowing ourselves to feel emotion, to express ourselves, to be the whole human experience that we are. We put ourselves in this box that says I am masculine and I can use anger and I can use rage, and everything else is being a pussy. Everything else is cutting you off from what it is to be human. And you're really doing a disservice to those people that you think you're showing up for and protecting, and your lack of attunement and emotional intelligence and ability to be in the moment is doing them a disservice. And you don't even know that until you get into this work. And so I think a lot of guys do really good at saying, like, I'm going to do this for other people. And so, at first, if it's not for you, do it for your family. Because when you do it for your family, it affects everyone, and it ripples out into the community, into your home life, your loved ones, and everyone's going to be affected by that. And it's for the greater good of the planet. Are you in service of others, or are you in service of self?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, man. Yeah, like you see on Instagram, like most guys kind of get it. Like, be strong, be fit, be able to protect your family, make money, I don't know, whatever it is. Like, guys value these things. It's not really about the fitness or the money or whatever. It's about being a strong, reliable man with integrity who provides value to the people in his community around him, his family. And I guess, if you link it to that, you say, man, this is like, it's good to be strong. It's good to be like, fit, like a good, healthy, male. And man, one of the best, healthiest things you could do for your family, for the people around you, is to be this, to regulate your nervous system. Maybe that is the way in to get the dudes interested. It's like, man, don't do it. If you're not ready to do it for yourself, cool. Do it for your family. Do it for your friends. Do it for your kids. Do it for your parents.
Yeah, man, that's a hard thing to see. Like, I remember that because one of the first guys I worked with in this work, I remember being like, hey, have you ever been to therapy? You want to go to therapy? Like, this sounds like something that would be good to talk to your therapist about. And I was still just health coaching. And he's like, no fucking way. And he's like, I'll talk to you. But then we looked at, like, how's this affecting your, I love that. Can I tell this story? Do we have enough time? Like 5 minutes?
Sure. Yeah. We can wrap it up with this, but yeah.
Yeah, this is a great story. So I had this guy, he's not open to this work. He's a hedge fund guy, made a shit ton, made a land developer, made a lot of money. Good old boy, really good guy. Came from nothing, right? Made a shit ton of money. And so he had these people around him, these bloodsuckers, if you will, that wanted his money. They didn't want his friendship. They didn't want his business, or they didn't want to enrich his business. They wanted something from him. They wanted their pound of flesh. And he had this physical, first day he comes over, we like do a workout or something, and he can't do a dumbbell above his, he can't get his shoulder in the air. And I'm like, how long has that been going on? He's like, 5 years or something like that. What? So I'm like, all right, let's go to the chiropractor. Let's get to the massage person. let's get this thing worked out. And 6 months goes by, nothing gets better. And we're talking about it one day, and he's like, man, I've been going for 6 months. I can't go to this chiropractor. It hurts worse. He goes, I'm just going to live with this. I'm like, tell me more about it, And he's like, man, I get home from work and his shoulders get hiked up to his ears. He's like, and I'm just carrying all this stress and I'm so tired. I can't do these walks at nighttime that you want me to do. And I was like, did you see what you just did? You see how your shoulders went up to your ears? Like, how often are you doing that? He's like, I don't know. I think I do it when I'm stressed. So I was like, all right, we're not going to therapy. We're not doing any of that. I was like, can you just, orient? Can you just pay attention to this and let me know when that happens and how often it happens? And, if you're doing it now, can you let that relax? Can that be the practice this week? Like, tell me everything you can about this tension and then, work with it, relax it whenever you're noticing it. Comes back, he's like, yeah, man, I'm in these long meetings with these assholes and I'm doing it the whole time. And I don't want to be there. I'm just kind of putting my head down and I'm going through the day. And it's exactly where it hurts on my neck. And he was able to release that, and it felt better. And so the next week I'm like, okay, so now what I want you to do is when you're in these meetings, I really want you to just be aware. Let's get as much awareness as you can. So I taught him how to orient, feet on the ground, notice the four walls, notice the sounds that people are making, like really focus on the words while you notice your breath and your seat, your back in your chair. We're just bringing you into the present moment instead of you being somewhere else. And I don't know how this is going to go down. I just started learning about Irene's work, and he came back 2 weeks later, and he's like, I'm like, so how'd it go? Expecting to hear nothing. And I was expecting crickets. And he's like, well, I fired these two assholes that were wanting my money. These people are no longer my friend because they weren't actually my friends. They wanted my money, and I'm completely redoing the business. And I was like, holy shit. And he's like, you were right, man. He's like, and you know what? My neck doesn't hurt as much anymore. My neck's getting better. And I'm like, holy crap. So that's just an example. We use trauma, and it can be assumed that, like you said when we were starting, it has to be this, somebody that went to war. But if you're going to war every day with yourself and you're dragging yourself through the day that you don't like, and you're around people that don't enrich you, that are pulling you down, that are sucking the blood out of you, well, then hell, that's trauma, And the more awareness we can bring in, the more we can follow our impulse, listen to our body, we can start to say no to that stuff and do different things. And that's what trauma work is, man. It's seeing the patterns, doing something different, and just continually listening to your body.
Mm-hmm. Good shit, man. That's a good note to end on. So with all of that being, I'd love to comment on that story, but we'll just keep going, man, for hours here. If people want to learn more about you, what you're up to, work with you, ask you questions, where is the best place or places for them to do that?
Yeah, I appreciate that, John. My website, mitchwebb.com, Mitch Webb on Instagram. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. And since we're going to be sharing this on my platform as well, will you also do the same and let us know where we can find you at?
Sure. Yeah. The best place for me is just go to rageheart.co. It's like Braveheart, but rageheart.co. There's an email newsletter. That's the best entry point. I'm a little bit on Instagram, but I'm not really posting right now, a bit on YouTube. But yeah, the best entry point, the best place to get sort of in on the inside is rageheart.co.
And I'll say, as we sign off, John's got some great social media posts. I actually was following him before we met in person, and I was like, oh shit, you're Rageheart.
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah.
I've kind of gotten a bit off Instagram, man. Just the grind of it. I've been enjoying that's why I'm trying to do more podcasts and YouTube videos, the longer form, more personal, I don't know. I enjoy this shit more.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think with that, you got to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Follow your impulse, man.
Cool. Good shit, man. I'll have links to all that at rageheart.co. I'll send you the recording too. And yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.